"One more step, and you're dead," she whispered. The words hung in the moonlight like smoke, and Marcus Thorne didn't move an inch. Couldn't move, not with the barrel of her rifle pressed against his spine, not with his hands caught halfway to his gun belt. He'd been reaching for water from the creek when she'd appeared behind him like a ghost, professional, silent, deadly. The woman's breathing was controlled, steady. This wasn't her first time holding a gun on a man. Marcus felt the cold metal of the rifle barrel through his shirt and calculated his chances. In 38 years of living hard in Wyoming territory, he'd faced down rustlers, claim jumpers, and worse. But something about this woman's voice, calm as winter ice, told him she'd pull the trigger without hesitation. Turn around. Slow. Marcus raised his hands and pivoted carefully. Moonlight revealed a figure in men's clothing, dark pants, worn boots, a hat pulled low over her face. But the voice had given her away, and now he could see the outline of her form beneath the loose shirt. Young, maybe 25, pretty from what he could make out in the shadows, and absolutely lethal. "You Marcus Thorne?" she asked. "Depends who's asking." The rifle never wavered. "I'm asking." Marcus studied her stance, the way she held the weapon. Confident, experienced. This wasn't some desperate woman waving a gun around. This was someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'm Thorne." Something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe, or disappointment. "Good, that makes this easier." She stepped back, creating distance between them, but kept the rifle trained on his chest. Smart. Too far for him to lunge, too close for him to miss if she decided to shoot. "You killed my brother," she said. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Brother. That narrowed it down, but not enough. He'd killed men in self. Defense, men who'd forced his hand, men who'd threatened his land, his cattle, his life, but he'd never killed anyone who didn't deserve it. "Your brother have a name?" he asked. "James Fletcher." The name hit him like a physical blow. James Fletcher, young, cocky, fast with a gun. He'd come to Marcus's ranch 3 months ago with papers claiming ownership of the water rights. Forged papers, as it turned out. When Marcus had refused to sell, Fletcher had drawn iron. Marcus had been faster. "Your brother drew first," Marcus said carefully. "I know." Her voice was barely above a whisper now. "That's what makes this so hard." The rifle trembled almost imperceptibly in her hands. Marcus caught the movement and felt a flicker of hope. She was having second thoughts. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Catherine. Catherine Fletcher." "Catherine, your brother, was a fool." The words came out bitter and sharp. "I know what kind of man James was. Know what he did to people, the lies he told, the trouble he caused. But he was still my brother." Marcus lowered his hands slightly, testing her reaction. She didn't object, so he brought them down to his sides. Still within reach of his Colt, but the gesture was peaceful. "He came to my place with forged documents," Marcus said. "Tried to steal my water rights. When I wouldn't sign them over, he went for his gun." "I said I know." Catherine's voice cracked. "Found the papers in his saddlebags after they brought his body home. Saw the lawyer's seal was wrong, the signatures forged. James always was too clever for his own good." The creek gurgled beside them, carrying the sound of their voices downstream into the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack. Normal night sounds, but they felt surreal against the backdrop of their standoff. "Then why are you here?" Marcus asked. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, younger, more vulnerable. "Because he was all the family I had left. Because someone has to answer for his death, even if he brought it on himself. And you figure that someone is me. Who else?" Marcus understood her pain. He'd lost family too. His parents to cholera, his wife to childbirth, his unborn son with her. Grief made people do desperate things, made them seek someone to blame when the universe offered no good answers. "Your brother made his choice, Catherine. I didn't hunt him down. He came to me." "I know." She wiped her face with her free hand, and Marcus saw tears glinting in the moonlight. But knowing something and feeling it are different things. The sound of horses carried on the night wind. Distant, but getting closer. Catherine heard it too, and her grip tightened on the rifle. "Expecting company?" she asked. Marcus felt ice in his veins. He recognized those hoofbeats, multiple riders, moving fast, heading straight for his ranch. "No, but I got an idea who it might be." The Garrett brothers. They'd been making noise about his water rights ever since James Fletcher's death. claiming the forged papers were legitimate. Now, they were coming to press their case with bullets instead of lawyers. How many? Catherine asked. 3, maybe 4, and they're not coming for conversation. Catherine looked toward the sound of approaching horses, then back at Marcus, her brother's killer and a woman with every reason to hate him, caught between vengeance and survival. We need to get to cover, Marcus said. The rifle barrel swung back toward his chest. I'm not done with you yet. No, but they will be if we don't move. Those men killed the Fletcher family lawyer last week when he started asking questions about those forged papers. Catherine's eyes widened. What? The Garretts forged those documents, used your brother to try and steal my land. When it went wrong, they killed everyone who could tie them to it. Marcus took a step toward her. Except you. The sound of hoofbeats was getting louder. You're lying, Catherine said, but doubt crept into her voice. Am I? Think about it. Your brother shows up with papers he couldn't possibly afford to forge himself. Papers that would have made the Garretts rich if I'd signed over my water rights. Marcus kept his voice calm, reasonable. Who else had that kind of money? That kind of motivation? The horses were close now. Marcus could hear individual hoofbeats, the jingle of spurs and harness. Catherine heard them too, and something like fear flickered across her face. They killed old man Hendricks too, Marcus continued. The assier who would have testified the papers were fake, made it look like a heart attack, but I saw the bruises. Stop. Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. Your brother was a pawn, Catherine. They used him and threw him away, just like they're planning to do with you. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness near Marcus's ranch house, followed by the crack of rifle fire. The Garretts weren't bothering with talk. They'd come to kill everyone and burn the evidence. They're shooting up my place, Marcus said grimly, looking for me, but they'll settle for you if they find you here. Catherine stared toward the gunfire, her face pale in the moonlight. Why should I trust you? Because right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and them. More gunshots echoed across the valley. Shouts carried on the night wind. Angry voices, frustrated men who couldn't find their target. It wouldn't take them long to start searching the surrounding area. The creek runs north toward the timber, Marcus said urgently. We can follow it, stay hidden in the brush until they give up and leave. We? You think they'll let you live after what you've learned? Your brother's dead, the lawyer's dead, the assier's dead. You're the last loose end. Catherine's rifle wavered, uncertainty replacing cold determination, in the east. Distance, one of the buildings at Marcus's ranch caught fire, probably the barn. Orange light danced against the clouds, and smoke began to drift their way. One of them's riding this direction, Marcus said, pointing toward a lone horseman silhouetted against the flames. Checking the perimeter. The rider was maybe a quarter mile away, following the creek bed toward their position. In 5 minutes, maybe less, he'd be on top of them. Catherine looked from the approaching rider to Marcus, then back again. Fear and anger warred in her expression, grief battling with survival instinct. If you're lying to me, she began, then shoot me after we get out of this alive. The lone rider spurred his horse faster, clearly having spotted something in the darkness ahead. Catherine Fletcher made her choice. This way, she whispered, lowering her rifle for the first time since they'd met. They moved upstream through the shallow water, staying low, using the creek bank for cover. Behind them, the rider's shouts echoed off the canyon walls. He'd found their tracks, but lost the trail in the rocky stream bed. Catherine moved like she'd spent her life outdoors, stepping carefully, avoiding the loose stones that might betray their position. Marcus found himself impressed despite everything. She wasn't just some grieving sister playing at revenge. She was competent, dangerous, and smart enough to recognize when circumstances changed. How far to the timber? She breathed. 1/2 mile, maybe less. Marcus glanced back. The rider had dismounted and was examining the creek bank with a torch. He'll figure out we went upstream soon enough. They moved faster, splashing through the ankle-deep water. The creek curved north toward a stand of pine trees that would provide better cover, but it also narrowed here, channeling them into a natural choke point. Wait, Catherine grabbed his arm. Marcus froze. Through the darkness ahead, he could see another horse tethered near the tree line, a second rider positioned to cut off their escape route. Ambush, he whispered. How did they know? They didn't, but they're not stupid. Marcus studied the terrain, looking for alternatives. The creek banks were too steep to climb quickly, the open ground too exposed. They were trapped between 2 armed men in a narrow canyon. We could go back, Catherine suggested. And run into the first one? No. Marcus made a decision. Can you shoot? better than my brother. That wasn't reassuring, given how James Fletcher had ended up, but it would have to do. The one ahead doesn't know we're here yet, Marcus said. If we can take him quiet, we can use his horse to get clear. Catherine nodded, checking her rifle. What about you? You're not armed. Marcus had been thinking the same thing. His Colt was still in its holster, but drawing it would make noise, possibly alert their target. They needed something quieter. Your brother's gun, he said. You wouldn't have come here without it. Catherine hesitated, then reached into her coat and pulled out a familiar Colt revolver. James Fletcher's gun, the same weapon that had killed 2 men before Marcus had been forced to shoot its owner. Seems fitting, she said, offering it grip first. Marcus took the gun, feeling its familiar weight. He'd seen this weapon before, recognized the carved initials on the handle. James Fletcher had been proud of this Colt, claimed it had never failed him, until the day it did. Stay here, Marcus whispered. If shooting starts, you cover the downstream approach. And if you don't come back... Marcus met her eyes in the moonlight. This woman had held a gun on him 20 minutes ago, ready to kill him for her brother's death. Now she was trusting him with her life. Then you were right about me all along. He disappeared into the shadows along the creek bank. The second rider never saw Marcus coming. One moment he was watching the creek bed for movement, the next he was unconscious in the pin. Needles, his horse and weapons in Marcus's hands. Marcus whistled softly, a nightbird call that would sound natural to anyone listening. Catherine emerged from her hiding spot and waded upstream. To join him. Clean? She asked. Clean, but the other one will be here soon. Marcus checked at the captured rifle. Fully loaded, good condition. We need to move. They mounted the stolen horse double and rode hard through the timber, following game trails that would hide their tracks. Behind them, angry shouts echoed through the canyon as the first rider found his unconscious partner. But by then they were already 2 miles away and putting more distance between themselves and trouble. They rode until dawn, finally stopping at an abandoned line shack high in the mountains. Marcus built a small fire while Catherine tended to the horse. The normalcy of these simple tasks felt strange after the violence of the night. Your ranch, Catherine said eventually. Did they burn it all? Marcus poked at the fire with a stick. Probably. But buildings can be rebuilt. Cattle can be replaced. He looked at her across the flames. People can't. Catherine was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft with unshed tears. I wanted someone to blame, someone to hate. It was easier than admitting James brought it on himself. Grief makes us do strange things. Is that an apology? It's understanding. Marcus set down the stick and leaned back against the cabin wall. Your brother wasn't evil, Catherine, just foolish. Young and foolish and easily used by men who were evil. The Garretts, Marcus nodded. But they'll answer for it now. What we learned tonight, what we can testify to, that's enough to bring them to justice. Catherine pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. And then what? For us, I mean. Marcus considered the question. He'd lost his ranch, his home, everything he'd built in Wyoming territory. Catherine had lost her brother, her family, her reasons for seeking revenge. They were both starting over from nothing. Don't know, he said honestly, but we're both alive to figure it out. 6 months later, Marcus Thorne stood in front of a federal judge in Cheyenne, watching as the Garrett brothers were sentenced to hang for murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Catherine Fletcher sat in the gallery behind him, wearing a blue dress instead of men's clothes, her hair pinned up proper and ladylike. The reward money for the Garretts bought Marcus new land in Colorado, a smaller spread but good water and honest neighbors. He asked Catherine to come with him, not as anything improper, just as someone who understood what it meant to start over after losing everything. She said yes. They never spoke much about that night by the creek, about the rifle she'd held on him, or the choice they had both made to trust instead of kill. But sometimes, on quiet evenings when they sat on the porch of their new home, Marcus would catch her looking at him with something like wonder in her eyes. What are you thinking? He'd ask. Just remembering, she'd say, how different things might have been. Years later, when their children asked about how their parents met, Catherine would tell them it was a story about choices, how sometimes the hardest choice was also the right one, and how forgiveness could be stronger than revenge. She never mentioned the rifle, never spoke of those whispered words in the moonlight. But Marcus remembered, on their wedding day, as Catherine walked down the aisle of the small church in their new town, He heard an echo of her voice from that night. One more step, and you're dead. Instead, that step had led to life, to love, to redemption for them both. The creek still ran through the mountains where they'd first met, carrying its stories downstream toward the valley below, where new families would build new dreams on the ashes of the old. Stories like this aren't just told, they're felt. If you felt it too, subscribe and stay with us.